Hemming I was a king in Denmark from 810 until his death. He was the successor of King Gudfred, his uncle. Family. Hemming I is mentioned in the royal Frankish annals as son to an unnamed brother of Gudfred, though Gesta Hammerbergensis Ecclesiae Pontificum by Adam of Bremen considers Hemming and Gudfred to be patruelis, paternal cousins. Gudfred had several sons who served as co-rulers of the Danes. However, they are typically called sons of Gudfred without mention of the names or personal histories. The sole exception was Horik I, who seems to have survived his siblings and was sole ruler by 827. They can all be considered paternal cousins of Hemming. Another nephew of Gudfred, Reginald, is mentioned in the royal Frankish annals. He is also identified as son to an unnamed brother of Gudfred. He could be a sibling to Hemming. Assuming Gudfred had more than one sibling, Hemming and Reginald could also be paternal first cousins. Reginald appears in an 808 entry detailing a campaign of Gudfred against the Obodrites. Gudfred reportedly made two-thirds of the Obodrites tributary, but he lost the best and most battle-tested of his soldiers. With them he lost Reginald, his brother's son, who was killed at the siege of a town along with a great number of Danish nobles. Hemming had two siblings identified in the annals, Hanquin and Angardeo. Sigefrid, one of his two rival successors on the throne, is also mentioned as a nephew of Gudfred. He could also be either a sibling or cousin to Hemming. Less clear is the relation of Hemming to the other rival successor, Anulo, and to the siblings of Anulo. Adam of Bremen considered Sigefrid and Anulo to be members of the same family, identifying both as nephews of Gudfred. The relation does not appear in the royal annals. However, there is an obscure phrase of the annals which could support the relation. Anulo, the nephew of Heriald and of the former king. The vague Latin phrase Hieroldi Aepsius Regius has been translated variously as Harold and the king himself and Harold previous king. Conversely, this could mean Anulo was Nepis of both the senior Harold and the other king mentioned in the same phrase, Hemming. Various attempts have been made to harmonize these kings from the Frankish annals with the legendary kings found in the accounts of traditional historians such as Saxo Grammaticus and the sagas. History of the Northmen, or Danes and Normans. For the earliest times to the conquest by Henry Wheaton suggested that Hemming was a direct descendant of Ragnar Lodbrok, equating Sigefrid of the annals with Sigurd Snake in the Eye, the traditional son of Lothbrok, while making successor Gudfred Sigurd's brother. An alternative reconstruction would make Gudfred identical to the Gudrod of Ynglingatal, semi-legendary king of Vestfold and himself son of Halfdan the Mild, who would then be the grandfather of Hemming. Other scholars reject these identifications and the legends to which they attempt to link, only crediting the annals as representing authentic history. Reign. The royal Frankish annals recorded the brief reign of Hemming. In 810, Charlemagne and Gudfred were in conflict. Gudfred had invaded Frisia and imposed tribute on its local population. He had then returned to Denmark. Charlemagne was preparing a retaliation campaign, gathering troops in the area of the Rhine. He led the assembled troops in the area where the Aller flows into the Weser River. The news reached him that Gudfred had died. The fleet which ravaged Frisia had returned home and King Godifred had been murdered by one of his retainers. Charlemagne called off the campaign. The last entry for year 810 mentions, after the death of Godifred, king of the Danes, Hemming, the son of his brother, succeeded to his throne and made peace with the emperor. The entries for 811 include detailed accounts of the negotiations between Hemming and Charlemagne. The peace announced between the emperor and Hemming, the king of the Danes, was only sworn on arms because of the severity of the winter, which closed the road for traveling between the parties. Only with the return of spring and the opening of the roads, which had been closed because of harsh frost, did 12 magnates of each party and people, that is of Franks and Danes, meet on the river Ida at Heiligen and confirm the peace by an exchange of oaths according to the customs. The nobles of the Frankish side were Count Wallach, son of Bernard, Count Burchard, Count Unrock, Count Odo, Count Megenhard, Count Bernard, Count Egbert, Count Theothari, Count Abo, Count Osdag, and Count Wigman. On the Danish side there were Hankon and Angardeo, Hemming's brothers, and in addition, other men distinguished among this people: Osfrid, nicknamed Turdimulo, Warstein, Suomi, another Osfrid, son of Heiligen, and Osfrid of Skåne, and Hebe in Euen. New envoys of Hemming are reported meeting Charlemagne in Aachen during November 811. About the middle of November he came to Aachen. The envoys of King Hemming, Eoin and Hebe, came to meet him and brought presents and assurances of peace. The entries in 811 end by mentioning the death of Charles the Younger and Charlemagne wintering in Aachen. The entries in 812 begin with mention of the situation in Denmark. Not much later the news arrived that Hemming, king of the Danes, had died. Sigefrid, the nephew of King Gudfred, and Anulo, the nephew of Heriald and of the former king, both wished to succeed him. Being unable to agree on who should be king, they raised troops, fought a battle, and were both killed. The party of Anulo won, however, and made his brothers Heriald and Reginfred the kings. The defeated party, out of necessity, had to go along with Anulo's party and did not reject the brothers as the kings. They say that 10,940 men died in that battle. Heriald, usually translated Harold, this man was Harold Clack. The Annalfaldenses give an almost identical account of this reign. This is not surprising, as the entries of the Annalfaldenses from 714 to the 830s were adopting material from earlier sources, including the Royal Frankish Annals. Hemming also appears in an 810 entry of the Gesta Hammerbergensis Ecclesiae Pontificum by Adam of Bremen, after the King Gudfred had subjected the Frisians and likewise the Nordalbingians, the Abodrites, and other Slavic peoples to tribute. He threatened even Charles with war. This strife very seriously retarded the emperor's purpose with respect to Hamburg. When at length, by the dispensation of heaven, Gudfred died, Hemming, his cousin, succeeded and soon made peace with the emperor, accepting the Ida River as the boundary of the kingdom. The term used in Latin was patruelis, which would mean a paternal cousin.